right after High Tension, when I moved to the US to meet producer and read script and find like my first movie in English, my first American production, I received a lot of script, and one of them was what would become Piranha3D. It was a very, very funny story that was like a creature movie about piranha. It was not a remake of the Joe Dante film, it was completely original, but it was written as a comedy. It was written like American Pie, and not as like a classic or a movie, really straight and very scary. And I thought it was very interesting, you know, like position for the scriptwriter to be more on the side of the comedy. And I kept that script in mind as something in the back of my head for a long time. And I went to do The Hills Have Eyes and Mirrors. And when I was finishing Mirrors, I've been reapproached by the Weinstein Company in Dimension. They asked me if I was still very interested or not to make a piranha movie, and I said, you know, it's funny because I cannot help myself to think about that script I read years ago. And I convinced them to give me carte blanche to rewrite that script, develop the spring break, push the envelope on each way, I mean on the sexy, on the gore, and make a movie that was more like an horror comedy than a straight horror movie. My first monster movie underwater was Jaws, like, you know, and I think it's the best way to start. And then my first memory of a piranha movie was the James Cameron one, the sequel, the number 2, that I have seen like maybe when I was like 8 or 9. And I remember I was really like scared, you know, it wasn't, you know, like even if they were flying and they were very campy and kind of like silly and not very believable at the time when you're 8, 9, it's a very, very traumatic memory. And then I saw the Joe Dante one, the first one, and that was very scary. I was like, I think 10 or 11. It's exactly because I am from France that I wanted to make such a movie. I'm obsessed by the Americana culture. I think there is something unique in this country, very strange. I mean, spring break doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. It's such a specific US phenomenon. And somehow the spring break, it's so intense, you know, it's that week of excess, of like full freedom in a very Puritanism society, in a very restrained society, that it becomes like almost like a metaphor of America itself, with all this contradiction and all this like paradox. And I really like wanted to use that as more like a symbol of that consummation society, that capitalism society represented by the spring break that's been attacked by those crazy piranha. And I really like that kind of European look to that American culture, like we come and we destroy them, more than being an American and making a straightforward like spring break movie. From the beginning I wanted to have like each actor bringing something from our pop culture, like a piece of our pop culture. I wanted like Elizabeth Shue, because she was Karate Kid, because she was Back to the Future, because she was Cocktail, because she was all those movies that we grew up watching. And I wanted like Christopher Lloyd, because he was Doc Brown from Back to the Future. I wanted to have like Ving Rhames, I wanted to have Jerry O'Connell because of Stand By Me. I wanted to have all those actors because they were not only bringing their old skill and old talent as an actor, but they were also bringing something more unique, like iconoclastic about our culture. And that the idea was to do some kind of postmodern casting, where everyone is also a reference to the 80s, to that kind of guilty pleasure that I wanted to revival somehow with Piranha3D. I was kind of a little bit disappointed by the way the American distributor like released the movie in the States, because they tried to lie to the audience. They tried to say this is a serious movie, this is a very scary movie. It's not like the comedy, fun, popcorn, sexy, bloody and movie that you saw and that I made and that I'm very happy and proud of. And I'm excited by Europe because I think we have like a better way of you know, looking at things, to see and read the subtext in movie, and to enjoy and make fun of those like you know, brainless American kids, you know, having spring break and getting attacked. I think the European will understand to be on the side of the piranha more than to be on the side of the spring breaker. We are talking about the sequel since the movie is a success. We are talking about the sequel, and there is a few story plots that I'm like thinking and I'm proposing to the studio. Maybe they will, you know, go for it. It's the same than the Hills of Ice. After the Hills of Ice 1 opened and was a very big success, they asked me if I wanted to do the sequel, and I say, here's the script I want to do for the sequel, and they decide to go with another story, and I think it was a big mistake because the sequel of the Hills of Ice is not that great. But here it's the same. We'll see. You know, I have a story, I have a few ideas, something that will, you know, allow me to push even further what I develop on Piranha3D, and we'll see what happens. One of my favorite movie all time, because I think it's one of the most perfect movie, and because it's so over the top and operatic and scary in the same time and well made, and it's a masterpiece. It's The Shining. The Shining for me, like still today, the best horror movie ever made. One of the most scary, but in the same time a very funny, dark, humorous movie, like where Jack Nicholson is so like, you know, like cynical and so funny somehow. I know people are really scared about the movie and don't see the humor, but I really like feel it is like something. But there is other movie that really influenced me. I mean, all the work of Brian De Palma in that time, like Dress to Kill, you know, the style of directing, where I really like the way he build up suspense by extending time in a very long way, where like a minute becomes an hour, and everything is so, you know, like articulate. It's a very, of course, all the Jaws, but for Piranha3D my biggest influence was the Gremlins. Not the original Piranha that Joe Dante made, but really like the other Joe Dante movie, The Gremlins, because Joe Dante was a director in the 80s that was like the dark side of Spielberg. You know, Spielberg was a very family, like very positive, not a lot of sarcasm about America itself, but Joe Dante was criticizing, at least bringing some subtext to the American culture. And The Gremlins was, even if it's a family movie, if it's a kids movie, it's a very interesting mix of genre that I wanted to take and pump for Piranha and make like some kind of Gremlins for adults somehow.